am my own producer, so that's
It's awesome.
why I need to do some magic so I can do the podcast, the streaming in my platform. So I think yes. Let me set up one more thing because I don't know why. Let me
Yeah, take your
check.
time. I know it's on. It's
Allow.
like on X, YouTube, everything, right? For you, you're on every
Yeah,
platform.
no, now I'm only on X.
Okay, got it.
But I'm do some magic. Then I upload the episode to YouTube. So
Hmm.
let's set up everything. Set up everything. Let's see if it's working. No, let me do the magic so it can start working. No, fuck. So let me do the magic to see if it start working. It says video unavailable. Let me work a little bit on that because sometimes. Sorry, guys, to the people who is on the other side. I am my own producer, so we are gonna go live in a couple of minutes. I think that yes, we are live.
All right.
Let me see if everything is working on X. If the audio is okay, because the other day I was streaming with a guy from Argentina and the audio was not working. So let's see. Let's see if everything is okay. Yes. Yes, audio is perfect. Everything is perfect. So we are live. Hello, this is the Bitcoin Libertarian. Our guest today is Tyler, also known as DurdenBTC, the analyst behind Durden's Bitcoin ledger on X. With a following of over 2,700 and focus on macro precision, Durden provides rigorous examinations of Bitcoin on-chain data, cycle structures, and macroeconomic influences. His work emphasized the importance of exiting positions ahead of market herds, drawing on historical patterns to deliver the conviction needed for navigating volatile cycles. Known for dissecting metrics like short-term holding behavior and challenging prevailing narratives on supply dynamics, Durden equips audience with tools for informed accumulation and risk management. Today, we will talk about the metrics behind Bitcoin analysis, which ones are the most important, and how they impact on investment decision. Durden, welcome.
Thank you, Fernando. I appreciate it. That was the best intro I've ever gotten. So I'm excited to chat with you a little bit.
Thank
Ready
you
to
very
get into
much.
it.
That's something that's I feel super proud because every one of my guests they say an amazing introduction and they like the introduction. So this is makes me proud and keeps me going and trying to push harder into the introduction. But the first question that I do to everyone, Tyler, is how were you on a spiel?
Say that again. The last word.
How were you on a spiel?
Oh, how?
How did you?
Okay, yes. How did I find out about Bitcoin? Um,
Yes.
I love that question. So I actually found out about Bitcoin originally online on a forum that I used to hang out. This was back before social media was really a big thing. This was probably 2012, maybe something like that. And I was on the off topic forums. Someone was talking about Bitcoin, like, hey, there's this new sort of online cash system. And that's when I first heard about it. I didn't look into it, I didn't do anything with it, I didn't do any research. And I guess over time, my first actual, sort of time that I purchased it was the first hype cycle, right? Which was about 2013, late 2012. So about a year later, this was when we, went to about $1,000. Sold everything, unfortunately, and then we had the huge bear market in 2015, where I think the price went down to something like $250. And then I got back into it way later than I would have liked to. I was sitting in New York at a bar when we went. I think it was over 17,000 in December of 2017, and the next morning we were back down at under 10K. And I was like, this is crazy. This is way too volatile for me. And that's where my journey kind of started. But in terms of getting sort of serious about investing and really looking at the macro was really within the last 2 years. So it took a long time for it to finally click, I think, for a lot of people too.
Yeah, for me too. For me too. It took me. I was telling you before starting the stream that I got through my friend, my business partner, the other person behind the Bitcoin Libertarian in 2011. We discovered Bitcoin and we bought, we sold, we gambled the Bitcoin. And I remember in 2017, as you said, that touched to 17K. Because the funny thing of that, I told you, and everyone probably knows that I'm from Argentina, that I was visiting, and I live in Asia since 2016. So I was visiting my family in 2017 when Bitcoin was in that all-time high of 17K. And then because of business and then because of the pandemic, I couldn't come back to Argentina until 2022. And in December 2022 was the bottom of the bear market. At that time, Bitcoin was 16K. So probably was at the same time when I was in Argentina in 2017 and then in 2022. And you said that you do a macro analysis and some funny, we are going to talk about that, but I want to start with some funny thing that we were speaking before starting the stream. People, something that I don't understand, especially because of the movements of Bitcoin, that probably new people is coming. We were talking today with my friend about that. Bitcoin crossed 100K last year, that most of us were waiting. In fact, my last question from my podcast in the past was when 100K, crossed 100K, then went down, went up, went down. But since the April 8, 2025, we only been 12 hours below 100K. We reached many times all-time high. 10 days ago, we had an all-time high. And now that price is going down, people is in fear. I don't know why. But you said that when people is scared, is the best moment for Bitcoin. Explain this concept and why.
Yeah, no, and I think you nailed it. And just to kind of zoom out a little bit, I mean, we crossed 100K in December 2024, right? So a long time ago, 9 months. And the tough thing is I think for a lot of people is just to have patience, right? If you look at the charts every day and you don't have a sort of strong thesis about where you think things are going to go, it's very hard to stomach the volatility, especially for, let's say, somebody that normally invests in normal assets like stocks or whatever else. Bitcoin is a whole nother animal. And yeah, to get to your point about when people are scared, that's when you want to be buying. It's very hard to maybe take action on market psychology because everyone knows when, there's that quote, when there's blood in the streets, you want to be buying. But it's very, yeah, but it's very hard to actually pull the trigger. I had the same exact feeling in April, when we went down to 75, 76, and I was sitting there thinking, the same thing probably everybody thinks, oh my God, it's over. Like that was it. We went to 100. That was the top. It's over. I had to literally force myself to buy more. And you kind of have to do what your monkey brain is saying, do the opposite. And then when everyone's too happy, when there's new all-time highs, that's when you want to start taking profits. It's easy to say, but I think the catch here is that it's very hard to actually pull the trigger when you need to.
Yeah, it takes discipline and it takes belief. It's the same that when you come back from the office very tired and you don't want to go to the gym and you say, no, today I skip, I don't want to go, but there's some force that come and say, no, just put your fucking clothes and go to the gym. So that's the discipline.
Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, I was just at the gym. I just came home and sort of starting my day. And when I first started going religiously to the gym, for example, I used to I would wake up at 6 a.m. and I'd be like, man, I'm sore. I don't feel like going, etc. And I would always tell myself that the only easy day was yesterday, and you just have to go. And by the time you get there, you warm up, you're like, okay, I'm glad I went, right? And that feeling after the workout, you're like, okay, I'm glad I went. And you have to have a long-term goal. And it's the same thing with Bitcoin. Honestly, you need to have a thesis. I have my thesis. It literally sits in my email, in my inbox on the top, so I can look at it every day. What is my long-term thesis for this cycle? And that's why when we do drop 20, 30%, I sit there, reread that in the dark, and I click buy.
Yes, of course. That's the thing. And one of the quotes that I like to say is, "When in doubt, zoom out." And today I uploaded an image of the price. I uploaded two images today. One we are going to discuss later, but the other is when I see that the fear and greed index is below 50, that today was like 47 or something. I like to post these images because 1 year ago, on August 25, 2024, first of all, we never saw Bitcoin over 100K, and was 68,000. 68,000. Today is 111. So why we need to be in fear? Why we need to see? We don't, it's because we don't. People don't understand. Or one of the theses that I have is that most of us, me included, thought that Bitcoin at this time of the year, with all the hype of the reserve in the United States, probably we were hoping today have a Bitcoin up 250, 300K. And this frustration becomes fear in most of the people. Do you think that it can be?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. The really popular chart all year has been the global M2 chart, where Bitcoin was correlated very tightly with it, right? And I post it maybe once a week that now we've pretty much decoupled from the global M2 chart. If we were to continue being where that is now, we would be at about 155,000, right? So that has changed. And yeah, to your point, the nation states, the treasury companies, right? That's been a huge narrative for the last year or so. There is this ongoing demand. I think the problem, and this is where the macro comes in, is that technically, at least in the United States, they're still doing quantitative tightening. They're not easing yet. They have not cut rates. They're already late to cutting rates. I mean, the Fed is historically late or early. They will probably cut rates in September. I didn't look at the Fed watch today, but I think it's probably around 90%. And the sort of dichotomy here for me anyway is that the United States is behind. 90% of global central banks in Europe and other countries, they're already easing. They're already lowering rates. They're injecting liquidity, right? China, for example, their M2 chart is just up and to the right. So all these other countries are injecting liquidity, and that is because the dollar has fallen sharply, and that has helped Bitcoin go up. But I think the last shoe to drop in this sort of thesis is the United States actually quantitative easing as opposed to tightening. They have to roll over the debt. Jerome Powell is not going to be here forever. He's going to be here till the end of the year, and then he's going to be replaced. And he's going to be replaced by someone super dovish, in my opinion, and that's going to send risk assets flying. So I think we just need to survive the chop and the grind. That's why, like you said, you have to zoom out. If you're trading this, it's, I don't trade, so I don't know. I can't give any advice, but for the long term, I'm still bullish into 2026, and nothing has changed. All of this other stuff in between is just noise.
Yes, of course. I don't trade because I suck at trading. And I think that the best way with Bitcoin and other kind of assets is buy and hold. Buy and hold. If you, for example, if you see how Warren Buffett became the richest man of the world, he didn't become by trading. He didn't trade. He buys and hold. He buys and hold. Probably you need to have this, probably the information, or do the research when to buy, to find these opportunities. For example, buying Bitcoin cheap, or when buying MicroStrategy cheap, or all these companies, but then hold and never trade. And what are the indicators that you always look at when coming to Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, well, for people completely new to the space, I would probably just suggest
Hello, hello. It's frozen. It's frozen. It's frozen. I don't know if.
oh,
Excuse me. I
is
don't
it
know if
my
you were
internet?
hearing me, but you got frozen. Could you please
Yeah.
repeat? You were starting like for people that is new to the space, and you got
Okay.
frozen. Probably the matrix doesn't want to send a message, so please send it again.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was my internet, so my apologies. Yeah, there's a dashboard that's called CBBI. You can just Google CBBI Bitcoin. It combines all the major on-chain metrics like the pool multiple, MVRV, um, the pi cycle top indicator. It combines them all into one score. I think that's a very good way for someone completely new to the space to take a look and see kind of where we are in the cycle. Are we overheated, or is it a good buying opportunity?
Interesting, interesting. And talking about cycles, because this is a question that, because I've been listening to many podcasts, many experts, and some of the things that I believe. Do you think that the normal cycles, these cycles of 4 years or these are over with the income, with the addition of Bitcoin treasury companies and ETF and the institutional money?
Mhm. Yeah, I go back and forth on this. I do think it's different. It's not going to be, the mania where you have 200% moves and all this stuff. The the thing I think people tend to not really pay attention to, and because everybody wants that, right? Everybody wants the huge moves. Everybody wants to blow off top, but with Bitcoin sitting at such a high market cap, right? It takes a lot more money to move it now than it used to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. Um, I still think there's going to be a cycle, and I think cycles will continue. But I think it's super clear now that the volatility is decreasing over time, and there's not going to be as explosive of movements. Could we still have a sort of retail driven blow off top mania? Sure. But I think over time, my whole sort of thesis is that all alpha decays, no matter what indicator you're using or piece of data. People are going to know about it. The more people that know about it, the less useful it becomes. It's the same thing with Bitcoin. As it matures as an asset, the volatility is going to decrease, and you kind of have to make sure that you're aware of that, right? That's why I stay away from crazy leverage and things like that. So I think the cycle in general will continue. We'll still always have bull and bear markets. I just don't think it's going to be as extreme and as volatile as it used to be, for good
Yes,
or
I
for bad.
think Yes, I think that this probably we are not going to see the bear market as we saw during 2022
Mm-hmm.
until I don't think that we are going to go this extreme.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, of course, correction happen in the market. At the end of the day, behind the market, there is people, there are sentiments, and other things that are not mathematically to analyze. And when would you started doing the analysis, the on-chain metrics analysis and the macro trends, and how these tools have shaped your understanding about Bitcoin?
Yeah, great question. I would say I started seriously doing it probably a year and a half ago. And then maybe 3, 4 months ago, I actually started sort of posting some of my stuff publicly. Um, I always want to make sure it works or sort of works at least before I share it. And one of the things that really stuck out to me is that there's so many potential inputs, right? You can be looking at the US dollar, right? The US dollar is inversely correlated to Bitcoin. So when the dollar goes up, Bitcoin generally is going down, and vice versa. You can look at things like oil, right? You can look at things like the ISM. You can look at M2, which has been obviously super popular this year. And then you have on chain metrics, right? One of my favorite is the MVRV ratio, um, and also the Poel multiple. I think in general, it's a good sort of hygiene to have a system, right? Have some sort of system, even if it's something as simple as a spreadsheet. right, on Google, and just to be tracking and monitoring things, because you'll become more, I guess, calm when these things do happen, right? When we do get 10% nukes, 30% corrections during bull markets are very common in Bitcoin. I think people just forget that because you tend to think about the good and not the bad. People kind of block out the bad mentally, just to like not think about it. But it did happen. It did happen in all the other cycles. I remember, I'm sure you were here for it, the yen carry trade, right? That was
Yes.
at the end of last year.
Yes.
It was that same thing. I had that same feeling in my gut, like, oh my God, we're at 45,000. Do I just like, is it over? And I had to force myself to buy. Like, I had to literally sit there and be like, what is my thesis? Okay, I'm still bullish on Bitcoin going into 2026. I'm buying. As much as it hurt and it felt like everything was over, everybody on my timeline was like, this is over. Yen carry trade blew up. Nothing's ever going to be the same again. And then a week later, it's like nothing happened. It's amazing.
Yes, yes. Many things happen, like in the last years, in the last month. Sorry, the yen carry trade, the tariff in United States, the war in Middle East. So and that's what I point. Like, probably the people who is crazy selling now are either whales. For example, today or yesterday, a whale sold 24,000 Bitcoin, or probably people that entered last year with the hype of the 100K, and then they are scared. They are scared and they are selling because if you do the zoom out and you see this year, we went through the Japanese carry trade. We went through the tariff war at the beginning in February. We forgot the DeepSeek. Remember when
Yep.
the DeepSeek happened and all the markets crashed? Then the war, and we are still over 100K. This is incredible. And one of the things that I say is when there are these, I don't say deep, but these corrections, because in my opinion, what we are going to live now is through a perpetual bull cycle with corrections, like probably 20%, 30%, something like that. And when happen this correction, the only thing that I worry is that I don't have enough money to buy. That's the point. I would love to have more money to buy these corrections. But at the end of the day, if you do DCA, and as you said, if you are sure of your metrics, you're sure what you're doing, you always see the long term, you always see the long run, and this is a journey, and it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Could you please talk me a little bit about the MBRB score, this metric that you use?
Yes. So MBRV is basically one of my favorite metrics. It gives you like a standard deviation look at kind of where Bitcoin is, and it is a long-term indicator, right? And it's part of my system. All it means basically, if I can remember this correctly, is market value to realized value. And it's the ratio of Bitcoin's actual market cap, so the current price times the supply, to its realized cap, which is basically like the aggregate cost basis of all the coins at which they last were moved. And so in simpler terms, it just measures how overvalued or undervalued Bitcoin is relative to sort of what people paid for it originally. So if it's above one, it just means that the average person holding it is in profit, right? And there's different ways to kind of calculate it, but it's a good way to see if we're kind of overheated or not in the short and long term. There's different ways to look at it, but it's on chain, meaning it's actual, what's happening in the transactions in the blocks. And that's one of my favorite things to look at because you can't manipulate that, right? The blockchain is set, and that's the most important part. You mentioned the whale selling 24,000 or whatever over I think it was yesterday, that kind of nuked the price. And it's crazy because that only moved at minus 3.5%. And most of that last probably percent or two was due to traders being liquidated, right? People who were long 50x, 25x, whatever, being liquidated out of their positions, causing the price to drop even more. So it was a leverage flush in my opinion, and I think it's very healthy for the market. And yeah, if you ever need to find cash and you don't have enough cash left, you got to start selling stuff in your house, sell the walls, sell your couch, so sell whatever you have to sell, and buy more Bitcoin, because
Yes.
you've seen the charts. Everything priced in Bitcoin eventually goes to zero.
Imagine if tomorrow or when I have my next stream, you see the only the wall. You don't see the books. You don't see anything, and then you don't see. I don't know. I cannot stream because I sell my computer for
Yeah,
Bitcoin.
you
So
might be
yes,
streaming from like a cave or something. Yeah.
yes, or I'm gonna leave instead of like I will pick up my camping tent and I will go to the middle of the mountain and leave my apartment so I don't pay any more rent and buy more Bitcoin. Oh, this is what happened to when you are a Bitcoiner. I don't know if you happen the same to you.
Oh
When
yeah.
you become a Bitcoiner, you become an ultra minimalist. Try to maximize your spend. Really, you have two options that this happened to me. You need you only buy the things that you need, but good quality. You
Mhm.
focus in good quality food, good quality drinks, good quality clothes. I'm not saying the brand clothes, Louis Vuitton, and all this crap, but
Mhm.
probably a good clothes that last a good amount of time. I don't know if you have if happened the same to you.
Yeah, I think you definitely start to look at money differently. And when I say money, I mean fiat currency in whatever country you're in, right? I always look at it like if I open up my bank account and I got my paycheck and whatever, I look at the cash in there. I'm like, why do I need US dollars? I don't need US dollars. They are losing perpetually, 5 to 8 to 12% a year, depending on sort of where we are in the cycle. But regardless, the fact stays the same. They're losing value over time. So why would I want to hold that? Um, yeah, there's just no point. It makes you look at life differently. And I think in a good way, like you mentioned, a lot of Bitcoiners are frugal. They do tend to really understand what they're spending their money on. And I think that's important, right? Because, for example, in the United States, it's crazy to me that finance is not, even basic finance is not taught in school. Like, you graduate high school here in the United States, no one ever taught you how to do accounting or balance a checkbook or any of this financial stuff. And I think it's that way on purpose. They want you
Of
broke, they
course.
want you stupid, and they want you holding your dollars while they get to print as much of them as they need to. And so, yeah, the system's broken, and not to be corny or anything, but Bitcoin does fix it.
Yes, I think that you nailed it when you said that in Argentina also we don't learn any kind of uh, financial education. For example, now the new educational system that the president wants to put, they want to put financial education. They want to put AI on the schools so the kids learn financial education. In fact, now in the in the public channel, in the public television, there is a channel for kids. It's called Paca Paca. And from last week, they started putting in the channel, I don't know if you heard about Turtle Twins, this cartoon. Well, it's a cartoon that they
Mhm.
talk about money, they talk about Austrian economics, and they
Mhm.
also talk about Bitcoin. And it's doing for kids. So that's amazing. But I do agree with you. When you need to explain about Bitcoin to a person, first of all, you need to explain about money. You need to
Mhm.
explain what the fuck happened in 1971 and why dollars are worthless. Today, a guy commented in our YouTube channel saying that, but if money is worthless, then Bitcoin is worthless. And I said, no, we are going to need something to do our exchanges. And money is already worthless. Fiat money is already worthless because it's not backed. Talking about the MBRB that you mentioned in a post highlighting the short-term holder MBRB,
Mhm.
and it signaled either a bullish run or a potential retest at 108K.
Mhm.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so this was just a chart that I posted. I think it was yesterday, and like you said, it's the short-term holder MVRV score. So it's kind of a little bit tracks the price a little bit more closely, and we're basically at a break it or make it zone, which is the zero line. So historically, Bitcoin has either dropped below the zero line, obviously, or bounced. And so we're just waiting to kind of see, will we bounce here? Or, if we do break below zero, that's usually a sign that there's more pain in the short term to come. But I think regardless, even being at zero during a bull market, anything under is a great place to add. If you're not already in any positions, it's a great place to start DCAing. And I think that's the main thing to take away from it. Again, I'm a long-term investor, so I do like to look at the short term just to see, if I could be adding leverage or doing anything to increase my maximum returns. But in general, I look at the long term. So if I have cash coming in on Friday, for example, and we're still under zero for the short-term holder MVRV, I'm going to be buying. That's basically how I look at it.
Yes, and always having this long-term position. And what do you think about the Bitcoin treasury companies? How do you see them, the strategy, if it's sustainable, and if you invest in that company too?
Yeah, I was scared you were going to ask this. So I'm back and forth on these, honestly. I won't make this answer too long. I did invest in MicroStrategy back in when it was like sub 100. And so then it became really popular. I closed that position immediately. And I'll answer it this way. Overall, I think it's good, right? Companies are realizing, what is the point of holding cash, or let's say in the United States, T-bills, right? So government T-bills. Sure, they're safe, but if you actually want to, hold your cash in something that's going to accumulate, yes, it's volatile. Entities are waking up to that. Now, I will back up a little bit out of that because, I'll put it this way. If you're in a place where you can't get, for some reason, any Bitcoin exposure, and the only way for you to do it is through a treasury company, then yes, go for it. It's your only option. I don't know where that would be, but let's just say that's the case. And for me, it always comes back to, why would I want to hold MSTR or another treasury company when I can just buy spot Bitcoin and self-custody in a cold, in a hardware wallet? What is the upside? They used to be a leveraged bet on Bitcoin, so they have sort of a beta above Bitcoin. But now, for example, in the United States, there are ETFs, right? You have IBIT, you can buy options as leverage. I just don't see the reasoning behind it in terms of investing my own money when I can just buy spot and own the underlying BTC. I'm not saying there's any tomfoolery going on, but when you start talking about paper IOU Bitcoins, like, oh, I'll owe you this Bitcoin and it's not actually being exchanged, I don't know how much of that is actually happening, but it is a risk, right? So I'd rather just hold the real thing. That's basically my thesis on it.
Yes, of course, totally agree. Of course, it's much better to hold the real Bitcoin. But I always say there is a big controversy because you have this hardcore maxi. For example, a couple of weeks ago, I had Knut Svanholm in the podcast that is a really hardcore Bitcoin maxi, and he says that treasury companies are the shit coins of this cycle, and many people is against that. To be honest, I'm a little bit. I don't like these guys who put Sailor as a superstar. For me, there are a lot of guys that they are Sailor fans. I'm not a Sailor fan. I think that what he's doing is incredible, and he did a lot of things to make Bitcoin mainstream, and that's the goal of these companies. For me, that's the usage, the utility of these companies. Make Bitcoin accessible and make Bitcoin mainstream. Because, for example, imagine a person who is 60 years old, 55, 60, 65. They don't want to deal with this cold wallet, hot wallet, the keys, the holding all this stuff. That was what I was explaining to the father. I talked about the father of my friend who lives in Miami, and he invests in stock. He usually invests, and I guide him through MicroStrategy or IB because he said, "I want to, what about Bitcoin?" And he thinks that it's very difficult to hold their keys and all these things. And he's
Yeah.
over 60, he's already wealthy, and he invested in strategy and IB. So I
Mhm.
think that these tools are good. As you said, if you cannot buy the spot, for example, as a company, my company in Hong Kong, we cannot go and buy Bitcoin and put in our balance sheet,
Mhm.
but we can go and buy strategy and
Mhm.
put in the balance sheet. So and we have assets. And same that happened in Japan. If you buy Bitcoin, I think that you need to pay 50% of tax. That's why people go and buy Metaplanet. So that's the arbitrage that they do. So I
Yeah.
think that they are useful, but at the end of the day, you are having IOU, you are not having Bitcoin.
Mhm.
And at the other day of the end of the day, I don't know why these people make the sailor, for example, a god,
Super person. Yeah,
a
I mean, I
superstar.
superstar. I totally agree with you. Like you said, if you have no other options, it's a good way to get in some exposure, right? But regardless of what people think of Sailor, he did change the game for better or worse.
That's
He
the
did
point.
start an avalanche. I mean, you have like there's companies that are like, I can't do a Bitcoin treasury. Everyone's already doing it. Let me do an ETH treasury, right? And it's just going down the risk curve. And none of that would have been possible without Sailor sort of going to these astronomical heights. I mean, no one was talking about him when we were in a bear market and everything was quote unquote dead. And now he's kind of risen like this phoenix from the ashes. I think what he's doing, it's good for the exposure. Would I necessarily buy it? No.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point because it's good. Again, it's good for the the main Bitcoin mainstream, and now all this hype of the Bitcoin treasury companies. In fact, we have um, a segment in our channel that we talk with. I talk every Saturday with a Italian guy who is very embedded on these things. And yeah, I think that Sailor is contributing a lot for the making Bitcoin mainstream. But as you said, at the end of the day, investing or not investing, you're not buying Bitcoin. You are exposed to Bitcoin, but you are not
Exactly.
buying Bitcoin. Uh,
Exactly.
anyways, I do respect these companies because I see them like a Trojan horse of the financial markets. That's a good thing. And I
Mm-hmm.
do respect. In fact, this week, Hong Kong is Hong Kong conference. Bitcoin Asia is coming to Hong Kong, and there will be many of the CEOs of these companies. In fact, one of my goals is to bring Simon Gerlovich to our podcast to talk about MetaPlanet. I had already the Andrew Webley from Smarter Web Company. I had Alexander Lyset from now is Capital B from France, and I want to have him. Of course, Sailor is a lot of levels over, but someday I will have it. So, but yeah, I do agree with you. I invest in a strategy. I think that they are a good way to probably get a little bit more of exposure. But what
Mm-hmm.
you need to understand is Bitcoin is your savings, Bitcoin is your retirement, and probably if you have spare money, these companies can multiply your money, or of course can go down. So that's the point.
Yeah, multiplication works both ways, right? It works up and then it also works down. I think, yeah, you nailed it. I mean, it's kind of funny to me because when I first started getting interested in Bitcoin, it was kind of after the bailouts of the banks, and people didn't really like Wall Street. And this is strictly from like a United States point of view or perspective. And so Bitcoin was kind of like this cypherpunk type of movement that the banks suck and fiat is garbage and no one wants to hold cash, and you should be holding Bitcoin. We don't trust the banks and we don't trust Wall Street. And it's kind of funny because now the whole narrative is we need Wall Street and we need the banks to sort of buy our bags. So it's completely flipped on its head. But I think this is the end game. There is no other way. If you want Bitcoin to be a global sort of reserve currency, the banks are going to have to adapt regardless, and they're going to do that whether you like it or not. So you just have to kind of go with it and see what happens. We are in a fourth turning, so things are going to get wild, and you just have to, like you said, zoom out and have your thesis and rock and roll.
Yeah, I think that one of the ethos of Bitcoin is that it's permissionless. Everyone can buy Bitcoin, no matter if you are a guy in the middle of Africa, or you are Michael Saylor, or you are the government of the United States of America. The magic of Bitcoin is that all of them play with the same rules. We all play with the same rules. So that's the magic that Bitcoin has. Bitcoin puts all of us in the same level. Of course, Saylor has access to more capital and easy capital to buy Bitcoin. He doesn't have my problem when Bitcoin goes down, and sometimes I don't have money to buy more Bitcoin because he's closer to the printing machine.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we all who invest in Bitcoin, all of us who trust in Bitcoin, we all play on the same rules. And on the other side, I think that I'm a maxi, but I'm also a realistic person. I love these projects in the middle of Africa doing circular economies, or in Latin America, and all these amazing things that are doing for inclusion. But on the other side, these projects are not going to trigger the massive adoption. The massive adoption needs to be triggered by the big money. Yep. So that's why I think that Wall Street is inevitable. Bitcoin is for everyone. And again, now as all the big money from Wall Street is coming, the people needs to be as awake as possible and try to secure as much Bitcoin as possible before Wall Street buys all the supply.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I kind of have to think about this also, as we're getting closer and closer to 2026, and in my opinion, probably halfway through 2026 or maybe late 2026, that's it for this cycle. I think I'm starting to think about what does the next one look like, and it's going to be over for most people if they don't wake up and get on board. And I think most people are still, unfortunately, asleep. Like I mentioned, in America, it's just a huge education problem. You don't really learn about finances and kind of why things are the way they are. Most people don't know about Jekyll Island. Most people right now don't know about the that money used to be actually backed by gold. Like you can turn in your cash and get gold in return. I would argue that 90% of people don't actually know that. And that's scary, right? And that's kind of the point, is the banks will front run you or the general population, and then everyone else will be running to catch up, but it's going to be too late. So this next, whatever the bear market looks like, or whatever the 2-3 years looks like, that's going to be the last chance, I think, to really get in before prices kind of start to get kind of crazy.
Yes, and if you do the simple math, you need to understand. I read that I don't know if only in America or in the whole world, there are around 80 million millionaires. 80 million millionaires. Mm-hmm. And there will be only 21 million Bitcoin. So imagine that how hard it's gonna be in the future to get one Bitcoin. And if you think on the other way, for these people who think, oh, I'm so late because it's already 100K. But if you can allocate only 0.1, if you can get 0.1 Bitcoin, that in United States is, I don't know, 13,000 US dollars. Mm-hmm. That is not a lot about, for example, in Argentina, this is a huge amount of money. But in United States, I think that you can get 13,000 US dollars to get 0.1 Bitcoin. And if you do this math, and as you said, if you watch the long term, it's gonna be awesome and it's gonna be huge.
Yeah.
And talking about your signals, because I think that of course you uh, study all the things to try to predict future prices. Of course, no final advice here. We are just talking and discussing potential scenarios
Yep.
based on current on-chain signals, like the one that you commented before, the MBRB.
Mhm.
What's your outlook for Bitcoin over the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah.
Are we
Uh,
gonna are we
Go
gonna
ahead.
be accelerating or could be cooling down?
Yeah. So, how do I answer this? I mean, there's a bunch of ways to answer this. I think it's gonna be volatile. I'm really looking at two things, and this is I should probably give a shout out to Raul Powell and Julian Patel at Real Vision, because a lot of the way that they build their thesis is sort of how I also look at the markets. So this is very U.S. based. In the U.S., we have something called the ISM, which is just like the business cycle, the manufacturing index. We've been under 50 for the longest period of time since it started being tracked, right? I think that's right. Someone out there will definitely fact check me on that. But generally, Bitcoin tops after the ISM tops out. So right now, the ISM has been below 50 for a really, really long time. Once that breaks out above 50 and goes to about 55, 60, that's when kind of the cycle tops. Also, the dollar weakness, right, from when Trump took office, right? He said he wanted a weaker dollar. The dollar has come down. I think that has fueled a lot of the sort of price appreciation in Bitcoin. And then in the United States specifically, we have a huge debt rollover problem. The debt has matured. It matures every 3 to 4 years. That's why there's this cyclical nature to all asset prices. They have to pay the piper starting this year. That's why they need rates to come down. And I think initially them dropping rates will probably be a short sell the news event because it's going to be priced in, and then off to the races that we go. So to answer your actual question, in terms of price predictions, and I'll have to watch this video a year from now to see how wrong I actually was, because it's never what you think it's going to be. But I'm a little bit more, maybe you could call it cynical. I would say a good target for Bitcoin by middle of next year in terms of median would probably be about 170, 180. If there really is a mania phase and you see retail coming in and all the crazy sort of stuff we've usually had in past cycles, we can easily hit 200, maybe more. My thing is always psychological, right? A lot of people are burned from the last cycle where we were at 60,000 and everyone was screaming 100K, 100K. It's going to happen. It's in the books. And Bitcoin tends to generally do the exact opposite of what everyone wants it to do. So I think if we actually do get to 170, 180, everyone's going to be shouting 200K, 200K, and we're not going to hit it, just like we always do. Now, believe me, I'm an optimist. I would love for it to go to 250. You have the sort of predictions from other folks. I'm not going to drop any names, but you probably know who it is, for 444,000 Bitcoin. Could that happen? 100% it could. Anything could happen. I'm just trying to set realistic goals for myself, so that if none of that even gets close, I'm not going to be super sad and depressed. But I think there's still a lot of runway to go, and that's what you should take out of this. Like, we still have higher to push. I don't think we're anywhere close to the end. Are we early? No, we're definitely not early. Early was 2 years ago, but we're definitely not. A lot of people on my timeline are like, this is over, and I think they're dead wrong, and they're going to be chasing for the next 6 to 9 months. So,
Nice. I was
long answer.
expecting a title for when I upload the podcast in YouTube, putting like 500K in 2 months, something like that. But I understand, and I think that all the things can happen, but sometimes you need to be realistic and you need to be thinking in what can happen in terms. We are now following the power law, and the
Yes.
power law is like quite accurate, and it's not these fancy predictions of I don't know, 1 million in the end of the year or something like that. But if you put these targets, and something that I think that happened, and I mentioned, is that what is happening now, why people is in fear, because they thought that today Bitcoin was going to be 300K, and is only 100, touch only 125. It is something. I love football, soccer. I'm from Argentina, and sometimes you buy. There come a player that is a super. He scores 2-3 goals per match, and when it comes to your team, it scores only one per match. That is a lot. It's a lot, but you feel frustrated because I say, oh, he's not scoring 3 per match. We were expecting that. So I think that this happened, and I agree with you with these rational expectations. It's gonna be better, and if it goes over that, we all know that Bitcoin is gonna go over these numbers. Bitcoin is like winning the lottery at slow pace, in slow motion. So it's gonna go much higher. But again, when we don't have the crystal ball, and if we had it, if I had the crystal ball, I would have bought a lot of Bitcoin down in 2011, and I will be now probably a billionaire and retire, and not here recording a live stream at 10:50 p.m. in the night, because tomorrow I have to go to the office again. And to talk about this and to start closing this conversation, I have 2 more questions that are more general. The first one is, what do you think about the future of Bitcoin? And I'm not putting the future as a number, as a price. The future of Bitcoin as a currency, as a movement, as a technology.
Yeah, great question. I do think about this a lot, and I think the main narrative right now for me in my head is everything going on with AI, right? So when AI kind of first came out, people either adopted it or refused, right? They were like, no, I don't want anything to do with it. Now you kind of have no choice, right? And so I forget who said this, definitely someone smarter than me, but if you had to bet on what AI would use as a currency, do you think it would be gold or US dollars? Definitely not. It would definitely be, whether it's Bitcoin or some form of cryptocurrency, that's what AI is going to be using. That's my sort of general baseline idea for the next 3 to 4 years, is what will be kind of the next narrative, the next wave. You already see AI trading bots, right, doing automated trading, all this other stuff. So it's just going to get wilder from here. And I think that at this point, it's hard to argue that Bitcoin and the entire crypto sort of economy, the whole space, that is the future, whether you like it or not. So you have to either get on board or be stuck holding this worthless paper. It's not worthless yet. We still have to use it to buy our groceries and buy our gas, but I don't think that it's a long way away from reaching its sort of efficient frontier in terms of utility. That's my case, is, what is AI going to be using? And that's what I want to be invested in. So I think Bitcoin's going to be the future regardless. It's just a matter of when. That's what I don't know.
Yes, I think with AI, that's why I argue sometimes with the people who do a lot of analysis of the prices, because we analyze the prices and what can happen based on the story, based on what happened in the past. And if you put AI in the middle, we are going to see that what is going to happen in the next years, the world is going to change. It's going to change, but at the same thing, I think that AI is going to be these moments in mankind, like the invention of the wheel, the industrial revolution, that is going to change and disrupt the mankind forever. And as you said, what are going to use the AI agents to pay one to the other? They are not going to use gold because not even us use gold. That's the
Yeah,
point.
they're
They
going
are
to use
not going to
hot
use you.
dogs.
Yeah, of course. They are not going to use US dollars. They are not going to use salt. They are going to use some kind of based digital currency.
Yeah,
And
you
I
nailed
think
it. And I
that,
think really quick, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I did want to say that I think it is important to, when you ask me my price prediction, to sort of limit kind of your euphoric thoughts about what it could be. And you mentioned the power law. And I think everyone who's not just a beginning investor, but a seasoned investor should understand the power law model and kind of where we are within that price band, because that is probably the most realistic mathematical way to look at Bitcoin and the price. And that is what Bitcoin is at the core, right? It's math. So, but yeah, I don't think AI agents are going to be trading USDs. So it's definitely going to be interesting, and it's going to be a wild time. And we're in for a global reset of some sort, with especially when AI begins recursively learning. That's sort of the next phase. Right now, I think AI has an average IQ of 100. It just knows everything, as opposed to being 100 IQ at some specific thing. It's 100 IQ at everything. Wait till that goes to 2, 3, 4, 500. Then what do we do?
yes.
So
Yes, of course. Yes. And if you want to learn about the power law, we have an episode in our channel. I will put here in when I upload in YouTube, but you can go to our YouTube channel. It's Bitcoin Libertarian, and you can find the episode with Giovanni Santostasi. He's the creator of the Bitcoin power law. And we have an episode of almost 3 hours where he explains the whole power law with graphics. Is amazing. It's a masterclass of Bitcoin power law, a must watch. And also, I think in a couple of Saturdays, on Saturday 6, I think we are gonna have another guy who studies a lot of power laws. I don't remember his name, but his YouTube channel is Porkopolis Economic, and he is an amazing analyst. He do amazing analysis. And when I put his stream, because he streams, only 5, 10, 9 people is watching. And I say, how come this guy must have like 10,000 people watching? Because he's doing an amazing analysis, and we are gonna have him on September in our stream. And Tyler, the last question that I do to everyone is, if you had the chance to sit down with Satoshi Nakamoto, to have a coffee, a beer, or whatever, what would you ask or say to him, her, or them?
great question. I don't think I deserve to be sitting in front of. I would assume they, but it could be a single person. I've read almost every forum post on Satoshi Institute, that has a sort of archive of all his forum posts, his emails, and I wouldn't say anything. If I was able to sit down with him, I would just say thank you, because Bitcoin has changed my life, and I think he or they or whoever she has done something to change the world irreversibly for the better. And for that, yeah, I would just say 2 words, which is thank you.
Yes, I think that is the only. I also think that it's them. And again, like the first thing that you need to say is thank you, because this tool is changing our generation and the future generation, and will make the world much better place to live for everyone. So Tyler, thank you very much for your time. Anything you want to add, and how people can contact you?
No, just thank you so much for having me on. It was a really, really fun talk. I appreciated it. It also made me look at some of the things I'm thinking about in sort of a different way. So, no, it was great talking to you. You can find me on X, DurdenBTC, and that's basically it. I appreciate it. I hope we do it again.
Of course, yeah, we can do it again in a couple of months, and I'm always I'm always open to keep discussing, to again exchange different ideas, because it makes you think and learn more. And you also have a YouTube channel.
Yes, although it's tiny, I don't really promote it that much. But yes, I do a show every Friday, which is called the Bitcoin Macro War Room, where I just go over the data that was released, any kind of changes. I share my system, whether or not you should be invested or not invested. And then I go through some fun tweets and then some on-chain data. So it's kind of just a general show once a week about my long-term thesis, and that's pretty much it.
Excellent.
Yeah, you can find it on my X.
Excellent. So excellent. Yes, yes. Go to his X. Go to the YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is now tiny because we were shut down by YouTube, and we have now 50 followers, 50 subscribers in YouTube. So go there, subscribe to our channel. It's Bitcoin Libertarian, so we can came back with the podcast and everything. So Tyler, thank you very much for your time. Has been a pleasure talking to you. And again, hope we can repeat this talk in the future.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here.
And thank you very much to everyone who is on the other side. If you like the episode, please give us a thumbs up. We are going to be uploading this in a couple of days in our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is Bitcoin Libertarian. We have also our YouTube channel in Spanish, Bitcoin Libertarian ESP, our Patreon, where you can find analysis of stocks and options that is not made by me, it's made by the other Bitcoin Libertarian who is in the shadows. Our Patreon is the Bitcoin Libertarian, our Instagram is the Bitcoin Libertarian, and our X, the Bitcoin _. Share this episode with the people you love, share this episode with the people you hate, because we must reach 8 billion people and get them into Bitcoin. See you in our next episode of our podcast. Stay humble, stack sats, and remember, we are all Satoshi.